Howdy folks, and welcome back to another episode of Tyria Talk. My name is Richie, and this show is all about the wonders of Guild Wars 2. This is episode number 4, and today we're going to talk about the underwater environment in Guild Wars 2. Now, we've recently had a deluge of information coming from ArenaNet regarding a whole bunch of different facets of the underwater experience in Guild Wars 2, so let's get into it. Historically, video games don't really like underwater levels. I mean, I believe this has started around the Super Mario Brothers era, where you'd get to a water level and everyone would groan. It's like, oh, you have to worry about this extra dimension now, and many games incorporate complex breathing mechanics in, so you have to watch a little meter to make sure that you're not drowning, and you also have to worry about obviously the X and Y and Z axis. It can be a little bit disorienting, and most games handle underwater by making you slower. So the whole experience feels sluggish. You got to worry about drowning, and then you can be confusing with the different dimensions. So ArenaNet's stance on this is they wanted to make the underwater experience fun, and they want to remove all that extra baggage that comes with it. So what they did right off the bat is they made it so there's no movement penalty. You swim as fast as you run on land, and you also when you dip into the water and go underneath the surface, you actually switch to a breathing apparatus that automatically gets equipped on your character, and it actually, you can see it on your face and little bubbles come out of it, and so you don't have to worry about breathing. And so immediately, two of those big concerns are taken away. Now, you still have to worry about the extra Z-axis. That's the whole point of kind of going underwater. But if you can handle that, then you might be in for a cool experience. They went through a lot of work to make sure that this is a major part of the game. They've actually said that they're a large part of the Guild Wars world is explorable underwater. There's lakes, there's rivers, there's oceans, but there's caves to find and explore. There's underwater civilizations with races of creatures, vendors, dynamic events, all of this kind of stuff. It can be found in Guild Wars 2 in underwater environments. Now let's talk about a little bit of how this works. A big part of in my previous episodes we've explored how in Guild Wars you have your little action bar, and 5 of your slots are based on the weapon that you have equipped. Well, not every weapon kind of makes sense in an underwater environment. A bow and arrow, for example, it's not going to be as effective underwater as it does on land. So what they do is they actually switch it up. When you go underwater, there are different weapons that you use, compared to what you use on land. So they have announced that there is 3 weapons, and they're usable by different professions. So there's the spear, and there is the trident, and I'm forgetting the other one. I have it over here. And the harpoon gun. Okay, so different professions can use different ones of those. So if you want to know real quick, the spear can be usable by warriors, necromancers, rangers, thieves, and guardians. The trident is kind of like the magical weapon, and that's for necromancers, guardians, and elementalists. And the harpoon gun can be used by engineers, warriors, rangers, and thieves. So those are the 3 weapons, and of course when you equip one of those underwater weapons while you're underwater, you get access to different skills. So it's kind of neat. It's a whole new ball game once you go under there. Now the skills over on the right, your utility spells and stuff, those are going to be converted to underwater equivalents. Now some of them will function just like they do on land, but some of them don't make sense. So they'll actually be converted to an underwater equivalent. And one example they kind of give is like on land, you might have an ability that knocks your opponent down or something like that. That doesn't really make sense underwater. So they have this mechanic where some of your spells will cause enemies to sink, and some of them might cause your enemies to float towards the surface. So that's pretty cool too. I've seen some videos. You can find them if you search around. They actually show some. ArenaNet shows you a walkthrough of how it works, And I gotta say, it's pretty seamless and it looks impressive. One of the things you can do is you can go underwater and start fighting a monster, and then you can actually retreat out of the water, and it'll switch back to your normal land weapon sets. But some of the creatures are amphibious and can come out of the water too, and their abilities change. There's one video where they showed you fighting some sort of water drake, and he's doing all kinds of attacks underwater, and when you pull him out of the water, then he starts breathing fire on you, which obviously wouldn't do very well in the water. So yeah, it's kind of impressive, and it's something that other MMOs have done before. There's an underwater component to a lot of MMOs, and like for example, World of Warcraft in the most latest expansion, they have an entire zone called Vashir that takes place underwater, and for the most part, they do a good job of overcoming some of the pitfalls of an underwater zone. They give you kind of like a seahorse mount to make your travel go a little faster, and they give you a spell that gets cast on you so that you can breathe underwater. And it's an okay experience. It's when you're going through it for the first time, you're leveling, you're going through the story. They do a solid job, but the reality is nobody goes to that zone anymore, and it's kind of like the ignored part of the most recent expansion. So it sounds like Guild Wars is really trying to say this is a major part of our game. This is a feature of our game, and we're going to actually develop a lot of things to make this work. So already having underwater skills versus above surface skills, and having whole new weapons that you can explore and try to use. Those are two big areas of it, and then all the content they put into it. So it'll be interesting to see how the whole thing plays out. Another aspect of it, which is kind of interesting, is I don't think I covered this in any other Tyria Talk, but basically what happens to you in combat when you get low on health is instead of just flat out just dying right away, you go to a downed state. And other characters can run over and revive you. Any character, doesn't matter what profession you are, they can revive you. Or you can try to revive yourself when you're in this down state, where you can still attack, and you have certain skills that you have available based on your profession when you're in this down state. And if you actually manage to kill another creature while you're downed, you can actually revive yourself. It's kind of neat in that regard. So it gives you kind of that second chance. You're not just out of the count. It's kind of like a Left 4 Dead thing where you fall down, you can still use your pistol and you're shooting people and help me, and somebody else can kind of pull you up. It's that kind of thing. Underwater it works similarly. You can go to you don't go to a down state though. It's kind of like your breathing apparatus gets knocked off of you and you're now drowning, and you have to you have to do something. So if you have access to certain drowning skills, and if you manage to kill an enemy, then you get revived automatically. You get your breathing apparatus back in. But the other thing you can do is you can swim to the surface, and if you manage to make it to the surface, obviously you can then breathe, fix your breathing apparatus, and boom, you're back in the action again. So the downed mechanic works a little bit differently, but it's almost a little bit more forgiving, because if you're not too far from the surface, all you really need to do is get to the top, and then you're golden. Trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to cover on that. I think that's basically it. It'll be interesting to see how they pull this off. I'll admit that when I first heard that a lot of the content was going, it's not that it's most of the content, but there is going to be a significant portion of the content in Guild Wars 2 that takes place underwater. I was a little concerned about it. Like I said, it's hard to get over that stigma that a lot of video games have, that underwater boards equals bad. But, I'm impressed with what I've seen so far. The videos, like I said, the walkthroughs that I've watched, does make it look like they've done their homework. They've put a lot of effort into making it more fun and less of an annoyance. One of the coolest things, that I saw was they was fighting this huge underwater drake, and there's all this these hanging plants and seaweed, hanging down. It's kind of like this kelp forest almost. And every time the drake was thrashing around in the water, the actual underwater plants were moving based on the actual combat animations of the drake, and I was just like, wow. I mean, it really felt like a living, breathing world under there. So I was impressed by that. So we'll see how it goes. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Tyria Talk. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please post them in the comments field below. I try to respond to as many of them as I can. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can be notified when future videos are released. And you can also find me on Twitter at Richie Procopio. Alright, thanks so much for watching, and I'll check you later. I don't know why I did that. I'll probably try to edit that out, but I might not be able to. So ignore the, and I won't do that next time.